Hello there, it's Memory from Friends Abroad Relationship School. So today we are at episode 6, I think, of our edition of Trauma on the Screen. And today we have a movie, The Marriage Story, starring Scarlett Johansson, Adam Driver. So, this story starts with the main stars sharing what they know or believe about their partners. So they are in therapy or in counseling, and they are both sharing, husband and wife, things that they like about their partner or things that they know about their partner. And the first thing we hear is about the wife, who knows what to do and is always brewing a cuppa which she does not drink, and she's a mother who plays. And it also sounds like there is too much of everything as far as she's concerned. When the husband is talking about her, it looks like she is that someone who goes the extra mile, if you want. So, then we also notice a stage where Charlie, the husband, mentions that he noticed that his wife was pushing for an emotion while she was acting, because the wife is an actor and the husband is a director. And by that, what I picked up in there was that he was trying to indicate that his wife struggled with her emotions, to relate to her emotions, and she was trying to push for an emotion so that she could show that she was feeling something when she was not good at actually showing her emotions, which is a challenge that we probably have most of the time because of our trauma. And then we have a situation where they are both in counseling or therapy, and what's happening is that the wife, Nicole, loses it and she leaves therapy or counseling because she feels like the counselor and her husband are on the same side. They are against her. So she leaves. And from there she goes back home to her family, and her mom is a widow. Her dad died, and there's also a sister, I think, who's an aspiring actress or something along those lines, because I think her mom had a career in TV, so she passed that on to her children. And we notice a recurring situation that people are struggling with in adulthood, where when you go and live with your family and you are an adult and your parents treat you like a child. Her mom, Nicole's mom, was trying to tell Nicole what to do. She went in the bedroom where Nicole was sleeping, and she opened the curtains in the morning, and she had to wake her up. And she had a problem with Nicole co-sleeping with her son, and also about getting up, and she told her what to do. And this is something that we tend to come across when we are grown up and we go back home. Our parents don't tend to respect the fact that we are grown-ups. Our parents don't tend to acknowledge that we are no longer the children that we were when they were raising us. They still continue to be parents. And I think I've heard this before discussed in so many forums, where we as parents claim that we are still parents, our children are always going to be our children, which is true, but also we need to acknowledge that when children are older, they need to be left to their own devices to make their own decisions unless they come to us asking for help. Because the problem with telling an adult what to do is that it comes from a place of control. Whether you are the parent or not, this person is a grown-up and they need to be able to choose what is best for them, just like we are choosing and we chose for ourselves. Nicole, when she moved to LA from New York, where she lived with her husband, she moved to LA with her son, where her family lived. She auditioned for an acting role, and there's an encounter that really fascinated me there, where one of the cast members said to her, he said something to her, to Nicole, and then he said, "I said it out of respect. I was raised by two mothers," trying to say that he does not disrespect women. And again, that's a societal issue where sometimes people speak in a certain way, and some people are disrespecting of maybe women or disrespecting of men. But more so, we have problems where women complain about disrespect from men, and that's featured in there. What happened between Nicole and Charlie was very fascinating as the story unfolds. They met, and that day that they met, they spent time together, a long time together, and then they spent the night together, and after that they never split up. They actually went on to marry each other. What seems to have happened in this is that they did not get time to know each other. And this can happen when someone is desperately wanting something, wanting a marriage, wanting a relationship, or wanting security. And this is what Charlie pointed out to Nicole at some point in the movie, that she used him to get to where she wanted to get to, which is quite fascinating. And it can happen again in society. People can subconsciously use other people, and sometimes consciously use another person to get to their next level or the next stage of their life. Unfortunately, as we notice in the movie, that doesn't normally work, because they didn't know each other that well. There were problems from the beginning, and Nicole mentioned that the problems were there in the beginning, which means there were red flags, but she ignored them because she went along with him just to make the relationship work, because he had great potential. He was this new director, young, coming from nowhere and making a life for himself, making a name for himself. And there she was, and she wanted an actress job, and she tagged along, and they got married and they had a child. But later on, she realized that this was not working for her. Why? Because the man, Charlie, was controlling. There was nothing that Nicole could do or decide in the relationship, because he made sure that anything that needed to be done was his decision. Anything that they did was his choice. And Nicole points out at some point in the movie, she said, "I never came alive for myself. I was feeding his aliveness. Everything was his taste. Even the furniture and everything, and even where they lived, they just moved into his place." So she felt left out. She felt like there was nothing of hers in their life. And if she wanted to do anything, he would be there to make a decision for them. There were also so many things that she did for him, but that was from a place, I feel, of codependency. I think Nicole was very codependent, which is why she did so much in the relationship. She even cut the hair for all of them in the family. They didn't go to the barber or to the hairdresser. She cut the hair for everybody, which is not a problem, but it also made Charlie dependent on her in that regard. Charlie never asked her, Nicole, what she wanted. And when she was successful, he was not supportive. He made fun of her success, was jealous, and told her what to do, as we have said. And Nicole, this is important, did not feel seen. And when you don't feel seen in a relationship, there is really no point in continuing. Because the whole point of being in a relationship is to see each other, to hear each other, and to acknowledge each other. And that was not happening on her part. And she said, that's when I realized he truly didn't see me. He didn't see me as something separate from himself. And this is enmeshment. They didn't know where he started and where she began and where he ended or where she started. They didn't have that. They were too enmeshed. The last straw was when she asked him her number. She asked him, what's my number? And he couldn't answer that. And that's when she split up with him. And she also suspected that he had slept with one of the ladies at work. I think her name was Marianne or something. We'll find out later. I've got the name down somewhere. But that was also one of the things that she found out about him. And we also have a very interesting character in this movie. Mom, Nicole's mom. She claimed that she was going to separate her relationship with her daughter from that of Charlie because she wanted to continue to have a relationship with Charlie. And her daughter was not happy about that. It did sound toxic. Although, again, it's safe to say, you can't stop people from doing what people do. But your own mother, I think it's very, very difficult. We'll find out that she was actually, most of the time, communicating with Charlie. Although in a way that was somehow helpful, but it was toxic, mostly. And also, we found out that she was also still talking to Cassie's ex, Jeff. Excuse me. Cassie was Nicole's sister. And she had split up with Jeff. And Mom was still meeting up for Jeff occasionally for lunch. You know, because she wanted to remain friends with these people. And you would wonder what the motive was. Why she needed to maintain contact with these people who had split up with their children. And at some point, we have a scene where Charlie arrives in LA and Henry, their son, is in the bathroom. And Henry does not want to come out of the bathroom to meet his dad because it seemed like Henry had already taken sides. And this tends to happen sometimes with children because they are confused. They can take the side of the parent that is with them, which is not very helpful because they can be pawned in these toxic or separation situations. Charlie does not want a divorce. After Casey had handed over the papers, saving him, because that's what plan had been made in the family, that Casey would hand over the divorce papers. She would save Charlie. And Nicole expressed to Charlie that she wanted a different life. But of course he was shocked. He didn't know what to do because he was not expecting this. He thought that his wife was going to come back. It was just a separation. And by then, I think Nicole had had enough. She had realized how much of herself had been lost in the relationship. Again, a codependent trait where we lose ourselves in relationships. And we don't know who we are anymore. So then, that same day, they both took Henry to bed. And when they were in bed, Charlie was reading to Henry before he left. And Henry actually asked Charlie to leave and then to come back, to wake him up or something like that. And again, you can see that the child is already getting used to the parent that he is with most of the time, and he is probably creating distance between himself and the father who doesn't live with him, the parent who doesn't live with him. So we also now find Charlie back in one scene, something that really excited me. Charlie went back to work as a director, and there's this man, Frank, who everyone knew what was going on. And Frank told Charlie to sleep with as many people as possible. Looking for love in the wrong places, because this is what some people believe, that the moment you are single, you are, you're a free agent. Of course you are, but sleeping with other people is not going to bring you love or peace of mind. That's the thing. Sleeping with as many people as possible. And then Marianne also was putting herself on Charlie. She was trying to get him to sleep with her again, and she was trying to make arrangements with him. And he made it clear that he wasn't really single. He was still married, but she said, well, we slept together when you were married. Again, a problem in society. Someone might see someone who's doing well and think, well, I need to go to bed with them. Maybe that's what Marianne was thinking, and she was putting herself out there when this man was married. You would actually start to think, what sort of examples did she have in her life for her to put herself in that situation where she throws herself at a married man? That's more trauma. And another time, Charlie travels again from New York to LA, and Henry does not want to come with him, to go out with him. And Charlie became aggressive. You could see how aggressive he was becoming. And it was also because there was a distance between him and his son, but he didn't pick up the cues that they were not that close in that period, because he wasn't seeing his son often and spending quality time with him. And then he starts looking for a lawyer, because Nicole has been referred to a lawyer for a divorce, although that was not the agreement that they had in the first place. And this is quite interesting. This was quite interesting for me, because I actually realized that people can make promises, but they are not obliged to keep them, you see. And this is why I say, and I do this in my life, where I've started to look for a situation, not a person. Don't take what anyone does personally. Focus on the situation that you want to accomplish. If someone changes their minds, it's okay. You keep pushing for your situation. There are so many cooperative components. People can go with you as far as they can go with you, and then you need to keep moving forward. You can't stop because people are not coming along with you. You can't ditch your goals because somebody is saying no. You've got to keep moving forward. And this is what devastated Charlie. He didn't believe a lot about what he had that Nicole had decided, because he believed in her so much. But he didn't realize that people change their minds. And that is life. And you've got to accept that. So his wife, someone told him, had seen many lawyers in order to minimize Charlie's options. Because if, according to that story, if you consult a lawyer, even if they don't represent you, just that consultation is enough for your partner not to hire them. They can't hire that person if you've consulted them. So that's apparently what Nicole had done. And Charlie didn't believe that. And I think Nicole might have gotten that from Nora, because Nora was really an aggressive lawyer. She knew her game and she was merciless. And Nicole's mom, interestingly again, this is where you see whether it's betrayal or it's very confusing. Nicole's mom is the one who helped Charlie to get a lawyer, to find a lawyer. Initially, he had looked for this lawyer, but they were just too expensive and too aggressive. And what they were suggesting was really too much for Charlie. So he had ditched that because he was trying to seek a resolution with Nicole out of court. But that was not going to happen because Nicole had already had Nora. So Nicole's mom helped him to find a lawyer. And then the lawyer that he found was very ethical. He didn't want lies. He didn't want, this aggression. He wanted to do things properly because he knew that if they did things properly, it wouldn't affect one, their finances, and also their child. So then there's another scene where Charlie has a conversation with Nicole, and she is out for Halloween, and they have this discussion where she mentions he's cheating and he's defensive about it, and she's so angry she stamps her foot, and then she told him that she had read his emails about the cheating, about him sleeping with Marianne. And then she's stamping her foot, and this guy sees her and speaks to her briefly and gives her alcohol. That was again another remarkable situation where we use alcohol to soothe ourselves. Anything that happens, I need a glass of wine to calm myself down. Rather than lean into our emotions and self-soothe, we want a glass of beer, we want a glass of wine. But that is not the point of wine. If you have an emotional experience, the important thing is to lean into your emotions and find out what they are trying to communicate, and then self-parent and self-soothe. And if you want a glass of wine or a beer later, go for it. But the idea most of the time, if you have made it a habit to go for a glass of wine when you have got an emotional experience, is to actually leave it maybe for a bit of a period to say, I'm going to pay attention to how I feel right now and focus on myself and not use anything that can soothe me that's external. Yeah, I know beer goes internal, but you know what I'm saying. So it's very important that we look into that. Our coping strategies, those little things that we do to soothe ourselves, it's better to ditch them for a period while we lean into our emotions, self-parent, self-soothe, self-regulate, and calm ourselves down. And then, when we know that, we can lean into our internal resources, our resources within. We can then at some point say, well, you know what? I'm going to have a glass of wine at some point. But not to calm yourself down, not as a drug of choice. It doesn't work. And then they went to meet the lawyers at some point, the solicitors, call them whatever you call them. And now, there was something that was remarkable there about Charlie's codependency, how he had relied so much on Nicole. He did not know what to order for lunch. And for a moment, everyone was waiting until Nicole took the menu, and then she looked at it and she chose what Charlie would eat for him. Very, very interesting when people are codependent and enmeshed. And they were struggling with legalities. Charlie, with the advice of his lawyer, found accommodation in LA so that he would be hopping from LA to New York to work. And again, at some point, we notice the codependency. Although they are separated, Nicole notices his hair, and because she's still codependent, she asks him about it and she offers to cut it for him. And then Charlie, because he was not happy about what's going on, he hires that lawyer who was very aggressive, and dirty play starts in court. Accusations and counter accusations. All the dirt comes out. You did this, you did that. The lawyer for Charlie accusing Nicole of being a slut, and the lawyer for Nicole accusing Charlie of cheating, and all things like that. And it became very dirty, where it could have been resolved in a very easy way. And they then realized that the court case was draining their resources. And so Nicole visited Charlie and asked him if they could talk. Thank you very much, Judith. Sorry, I was a bit far. Thank you. She asked Nicole if they could talk. And I really like that, because initially, Charlie, whatever his faults, wanted to resolve this as they had agreed before. But Nicole refused. And now they are realizing that the money that they can all use and the money that can go towards their child is now being drained by lawyers on two sides. And then they realize that they are actually fighting a losing battle. And this they had been told by Charlie's older lawyer. He had advised him about this. So they started to talk, but the talk didn't go very well, because they now started talking about their problems for the first time, the reason why they broke up in the end. And as you can think of, it didn't go very well. It was very dirty, very aggressive. Charlie thought that they were happy, and this is the problem. The assumptions that we make in relationships because someone is not saying something, and said Nicole was happy until she wasn't, you see, because until she decided she wasn't happy, she was happy. And that's what he assumed. He didn't see how much she was doing and how much she was over-functioning in the relationship. And Nicole told him that he does not consider anyone else but himself. And then he told her, going through a divorce and running a company, he found it difficult to parent. Because although he spent time with his son, he didn't actually spend quality time with him. It was just spending time with his son so that he could be in his son's life. It didn't look like he was actually aware of his son's emotional needs, which is again something that happens in life, that we can be present physically in a child's life without being emotionally present. And a parent like Nicole, who was attuned to her child's needs, could see how distant Charlie was with the child. Because when a parent, according to experts, is preoccupied with other things, it's very difficult for them to be present in their child's life. And I feel like this was spilling into both of their lives now, because they were both preoccupied. But more so for Charlie, because he had been a busy working parent, and Nicole had stayed at home with her son. So she was more closer and more attuned to a child's needs. So that's very important to observe. He told her, "You chose this life until you didn't." And he defended his cheating with Marianne. I found that really, really interesting what he said there. He told Nicole that he came from nothing and found himself as a successful director in his 20s. And he could have done more. He actually felt that he could have done more. And Nicole interfered with that. He told her he didn't want to get married. He was starting to be honest. And you can see the charade of some relationships, some marriages, where people just go along. Just because your partner is passive and not complaining, it doesn't mean to say they don't have complaints. Sometimes you need to open your heart and communicate from your heart and find out what's going on. especially if you pick up red flags from the start. Because someone might just go along and marry you or live with you, but they are not happy with you. They feel like something has been taken away from them. And this is how Charlie felt. Although they both felt like everything was going well, they were playing happy families. But actually, deep down, both of them were not content. Something was not there. They were running on empty because of where they came from. And we know that Charlie's parents were alcoholic, which is quite fascinating. And it would explain why he was in this situation. And there's a very fascinating point in that movie where it says Charlie could make a family anywhere you went. Why? Because he desperately needed the family that he didn't have in childhood. So he had to create families anywhere he went. He made sure that anyone and everyone that he encountered was catered for, was comfortable, was made welcome, including the interns who came to work on the movie set. So that was really, really powerful. And in the end, it really got heated up, this discussion. It got heated up, but in the end, he was crying. You see the tears of a man, which is rare, but apparently he cried a lot when he watched movies, which is an indication that he was somehow in touch with his feelings, you see. But he just wanted to be in control. He had this unmet need to be in control because he came from a place of nothing, of not having control, of alcoholic parents. So he had that unmet need, and he had to fulfill that in his relationship. He had to be in charge of each and everything that happened. So he thought, not knowing that he was ruining the very thing that he loved. In the end, we see him having an interview with a social worker, someone from the children's services, so that they could contest the custody. And it was a very interesting one there, because you could see that he was trying too hard to impress this woman. He was trying too hard to make sure that everything looked homely and loving, and his son was cared for and was loved. He was trying for his son. And in the end, his child, as children do, said something about a knife. And he tried to hide that, but I think he felt really guilty. And you could see this woman sitting there, very official, prim and proper, and monitoring. And you can't eat in that environment. It was hilarious when I watched that. She was very official. She only drank water. And I think she was there for a very long time. And in the end, he decided to confess about the knife thing, to show her that it was safe, and he cut himself, and he made a fool of himself in front of her. And the significant thing that I picked up in that scene is when she asked him if he was okay. And like a man, like a typical man, or most men, let me not be stereotypical, he said he was okay. Rather than say, I've cut myself, I need help. He couldn't do that. And the moment this woman left, he rushed to the sink. He had to first aid himself because he had a bleeding cut and all that. And his son came and he was lying on the floor. And you could see how devastated he was, how struggling he was with the whole situation, because he thought he had failed. That's what he thought. And he thought, maybe I'll lose my son. And in that, Nora had also had a simulated interview with her lawyer. Sorry, not Nora, but Nicole had a simulated interview with Nora and somebody in the office. And she was being honest, because Nicole wanted to be honest, but her lawyer, Nora, was a shark. She was really aggressive. And Nora warned Nicole about what to say, because mothers are held to a different standards to men or fathers. That's society. Although things are now changing, it is still there that the mothers are the main caregivers for young children, and so they are expected to be perfect. That is the thing. So this is what she was trying to tell her so that she could keep custody of her son. And in the end, we noticed that Nora actually settled for 55-45 custody, which Nicole didn't like, because Nicole wanted to make sure that Henry maintained a 50-50 relationship with both his parents. And this is very important. You can see that Nicole had her child's interest at heart. It was not the fight about the child. She knew that it was them, and she didn't even want much from her ex-husband, but it was Nora who was pushing for a lot, because all Nicole wanted was to live and have her own life, and she just wanted to co-parent with Charlie. That is all. But her shark lawyer wanted more. And we noticed that even at the end, she was allowing Charlie to have Henry on her own night, because she felt that was really important for their son. Charlie, in the end, also moved and took residence at UCLA, which was really remarkable and an important move for them and for their son. And we also note a scene where Henry finds his mom's description of his dad. And then he's trying to read, because Henry was trying to learn to read. And Charlie comes and finds Henry struggling to read the letters, but he was doing better than before. And he sits with Henry and he starts to support Henry with the reading. And Henry then asks Charlie to finish the reading. And Charlie started crying, because what Nicole had written there about him was very touching. There was nothing negative that Nicole wrote about Charlie, which is awesome. She had only focused on the positives, not that there were no negatives, because she told him the negatives face to face. But this is also where you might start to feel, was she writing the positives just to make sure that they would resolve issues, or was she trying to avoid the dirty negatives, just to maintain the status quo initially? But it was so touching, Charlie cried. And that is the end of the analysis. So really, there is so much in there to unravel about codependency, and toxic relationships, because toxic relationships don't necessarily have to have, fist fights and verbal abuse and all that. Sometimes it's simply you not having your needs met and struggling inwardly, feeling like you are doing so much for the relationship, or feeling like you have lost something for the sake of the relationship. And in the end, what happens to those relationships is they fall apart. Or people plod on, but with no love together. They might just have their assets left between them. There are people who stay together for the sake of assets and children. And you might think, oh, these are happy families, and they are very good at playing happy families. Because as Charles said, when he cheated, they hadn't slept together for a year. And that is challenging, because they were young, they were not an old couple, and they had grown apart, which indicates that their needs were not being met. For him to step outside his home, no excuse, but there was a problem. They were not getting on. And this is what I say most of the time. People don't cheat because they want, somebody else, or they want to destroy their relationship. People cheat because they are relationship problems. So they step outside rather than resolve conflict, which is what was happening. I feel like there was a lot of conflict avoidance in that relationship. So because there was conflict avoidance, they couldn't resolve whatever issues they had. So in the end, they both found their own ways of solving their problems, which didn't help in the end, and it led to a divorce. And even though Charlie wanted them to continue with their happy family, it didn't work. Nicole couldn't have it. So that concludes my analysis. Wow. Thank you very much, Juditha. I reminded you of you. that is inspiring. I hope that was helpful, and I hope I see you all soon. And remember, quality life before relationships. Thank you so much for watching. Admire Juditha and anyone else. See you soon. And Juditha, I hope that we can do the next one together. I hope you'll be ready next time. You just let me know a best time for you. Quality life before relationships. Thank you. Bye-bye.